Hello friends, welcome back to Cosmopolitan Cornbread. So I'm getting ready to do some canning after a sip of coffee. Alright, so if you saw my last, I believe it was my last Azure Standard haul, you know I bought a whole bunch of mustard because I had been planning on making a great big batch and canning my Carolina barbecue sauce, which is a mustard-based barbecue sauce. And so that is what we're going to do today. Now the recipe that I'm using is based on one that has been on my website for more than a decade, very long time, and it is based off a recipe that I used to make for Carolina pulled pork. Now, I don't make Carolina pulled pork anymore. I do, however, make that very same recipe with turkey. You can get like the great big turkey breasts, like the whole breasts, and slow cook it like that and shred it just like you would pulled pork, and it is delicious. My son has actually tried making it with beef and he loved it. So there's plenty of options. That said, I have been thinking for some time about doing a version of the recipe that I canned, and it really prompted me to dive into it when I had a subscriber reach out to me and ask me about canning this very same barbecue sauce. So I spent some time doing a little bit of homework. This is my own recipe that I am modifying to make it what I consider safe for canning. The original recipe used butter in it as kind of a thickener, helping it to coat the meat and everything. Now, sometimes you can use butter, like when you're doing caramelized onions and you cook them way down, but that uses very little butter. This, however, used 1/4 cup of butter for every batch, and I'm doing several batches, and that would make a lot of butter. And so rather than using that, I'm just going to omit it. And then when it comes time to actually use the canned barbecue sauce, the preserved version, I'll test it out and I'll see if it needs thickening at all or if it'll work just fine without that. And if I need to, what I'll simply do is melt some butter and stir it into the jar at the time of use, but it may not even need it. We'll just kind of see how it goes. But as far as for canning goes, I'm just simply going to go ahead and omit that because using a lot of oil, using things like that is really not recommended in most canning recipes. Now this recipe again is based off of one that I have made for countless years. And I just spent some time researching different canning recipes, looking at mustards, looking at barbecue sauces and ketchups and things like that. And generally the longest processing time for barbecue sauce is 20 minutes. This is a mustard-based sauce. It's going to be much more acidic, but rather than cutting it down to the mustard processing time, which is 10 minutes, I'm just going to keep it at the 20 minutes. And so I figure that is more than sufficient. That way I have no doubt that it will be safe for canning. So this, I guess some people might consider this rebel canning. I don't see this as rebel canning because I am researching and I am looking at safe canning methods. It is not a recipe that comes from the Ball Blue Book, and you don't have to just use the Ball Blue Book. There are plenty of other recipes out there that are canning but are safe. They don't just have to come from the Blue Book, which some people think you have to follow by. But when it comes to canning, there's simply safe canning practices that are established, that are known to be safe. And so that is what I'm following today, which is why I'm omitting the butter from the sauce, and just going to kind of go from there. So we're going to try this out. I'm doing a quadruple batch of what I would normally make for a big old batch of the pulled meat, the pulled turkey now. And one of the things that I am doing is I am reducing the liquid smoke a little bit, because in canning, smoke flavor gets intensified So it is recommended that you cut it back. And so this would have called for a half a cup of liquid smoke for all of this, but I'm just cutting it down to a third of a cup. And again, I'm just doing a quadruple batch, so that isn't actually going to be a ton of this sauce. And if it's a little bit heavy on the smoke, then we'll know that next time it needs to be cut down again. So, all right, I'm going to get started opening up my mustard, which, y'all, I kind of went overboard on this. I bought way more mustard than I needed. I only need 8 cups for a quadruple batch. And, yeah, I'm going to have plenty left over. So the first thing I need is 8 cups of mustard. So I'm just opening up my organic Azure Standard mustard here, classic traditional yellow mustard, and measuring out 8 cups. And then we'll put this in my big non-reactive pot, which non-reactive basically just means it's stainless steel, it's not aluminum, it's not copper. And that's generally it. No copper, no aluminum, because those two metals, the acidity, the acids in the foods that you're canning can have a chemical reaction with the metal, and it can cause the food that you are canning to have a very off taste. So anytime you're doing canning, you're supposed to use, for the food, not necessarily the processing, because a lot of canners are made out of aluminum, but as far as the food goes, stainless steel, enameled, just no aluminum directly touching the food and no copper directly touching the food, ideally. Now, there are some very old canning, jelly making pots out there that are made out of copper. But I've never used one of those, and I don't know what kind of fruits that they would cook down that it wouldn't be hindered, you know, by the metal. So I just stick with stainless steel, or I actually had some really big enameled pots. I decided to get rid of those. I just donated them because I wasn't sure how long the enamel coating would last. And, you know, it's a non-stick coating, and granted it was BPA free and all of that stuff, but I just like stainless steel. I don't have any questions about it, and I know it'll last forever practically, so I just swapped those out for this one. And this is a great big David Burke brand. I have some other saucepans by that brand, and I love them. I've had them for years, and I just got one of these at TJ Maxx. So I've got the first 4 cups of the mustard here, and it took 3 of these 12-ounce bottles. And I'm not going to throw these away quite yet, because one of the ingredients in this recipe is water. And so to not waste the mustard that is in there, I always take the water for the recipe, pour some of it into the bottle, give it a shake, and then I add it in. That way I'm getting every little bit out of there and not wasting any of it. Down, 3 more to go. And since I know that those 3 jars worked out perfectly for my 8 cups, I'm not going to worry about measuring. These ones, I'm just going to put them straight into my big cook pot here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in my 1/3 of a cup of liquid smoke. And then I'm going to measure out, I'm going to need 4 cups of water, and I'm going to measure that out and pour some in each of the bottles to shake it and just get the rest of that mustard out of these. Next I need 6 cups of apple cider vinegar. Alright, next I'm going to need 8 cups of granulated sugar. Five, 6, 7, 8. So we had 8 cups of granulated sugar, and then we need 2 cups of brown sugar. Alright, so next we need a cup of chili powder. Now I need 2 tablespoons of ground black pepper. And most of the time I do fresh ground for everything, but when I'm doing a lot like this, this is where my pre-ground comes in handy. So 2 tablespoons of this. Alright, now I need 2 tablespoons, or excuse me, 2 teaspoons of cayenne. And then finally, we need 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. Woo! We'll go a little bit light on that one. There we go. 2 tablespoons soy sauce. Alright, so now I'm just going to let this begin cooking. I'm going to bring it up to a boil, and then I'm going to reduce the heat and let this simmer for a good little while and let the flavor really develop. I've got my washed lids in some hot water, got my lid magnet, my bubble wand, aka chopstick, my jar lifter tongs, my ladle, my little dish of white vinegar, my funnel, and then I just need to grab a damp cloth. I've got my jars over here that have been heating up in the steam canner, pint jars. And this has been simmering. I actually let it go for about an hour. And so now it is time to jar this up. Alright, let me grab a jar. Let me turn that down because it's boiling. And I'm going to go ahead and grab a second jar so that it's ready to go. Let's bring you down here. Alright, now when I was doing my homework on the processing of something like this, I saw two different references to the headspace. Some recipes said 1/2 inch, some recipes said 1/4 of an inch. I'm going to err on the side of caution, and I'm going to go with the 1/2 inch of headspace. And I would have loved to have been able to can this or process this in quarts, but I could not find any recipes that mentioned quarts when it came to canning barbecue sauce or mustard. And so we're just going to go ahead and we're going to go with the pints. So we're just going to ladle in this hot Carolina barbecue sauce. Up to the 1/2 inch of headspace. I'm using a smaller ladle today, so it takes a couple more it takes a couple more ladlefuls to fill this. Alright. And I know it's a liquid, but this is kind of thicker, so we're just going to go ahead and do the bubble wand thing, even though I've said I don't really do it for liquids. That's alright. I pulled it out of the cabinet, so we'll just go for it. Alright, 1/2 inch of headspace, damp cloth dipped in white vinegar. We're going to wipe the tops of the jar off real good, just to make sure there's nothing on there. And then on with a hot ring. Or hot lid. And a ring. And into the canner. And that is hot, so we'll go ahead and use the jar lifter for that. Stir. Okay. See, there was a little bit of residue on there, so always good to wipe it with the cloth with vinegar. And then I'm just going to keep on jarring all of this up. Alright, so I ended up getting 9 pints plus a little bit left over here, which I'm going to put in a quart jar over there and just put it straight into the fridge after it cools down. So I'm going to go ahead and throw my lid on. This has been heating up while I've been jarring up the all of the barbecue sauce. And so this being a steam canner, I'm going to allow it to come up to temperature, which the little gauge here in the handle will show me that. Once it's up to temperature, then the processing time that I'm going to go with is the 20 minutes. Oh, what do I think? Let me see. What do we think? Oh, it's beautiful.
I like it.
You like it? Is it pretty? Bracelet? That's right. So most barbecue sauces, the processing time was somewhere between 10 minutes and 20 minutes. So I'm going with the 20 minutes just to be on the safe side. And so when it is done, when it's up to temperature, I will set my timer, and then I'll join you back here in a little bit. Oh, beautiful. Oh, very nice.
Oh.
What do I think? Oh, very nice. Beautiful. You like those bracelets? Hmm? So I ended up getting 10 pints plus a little bit extra. So I'll let this cool, and then this will just go into the refrigerator, and I'll use it in the coming days or weeks. Alrighty. So my timer went off after processing for 20 minutes. Because this is a steam canner, you leave the dome on for 5 more minutes, and then you go ahead and remove the dome, and then you can go ahead and take the jars out. If you were doing this in a hot water bath canner, of course the processing time would finish. You would take the lid off, and you would wait 5 minutes, and then you would take the jars out. So it's just a little bit different when you're using a steam canner versus a hot water bath canner. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull these out. So now we're just going to let these sit here overnight to cool. Tomorrow I'll remove the rings, test the seals, wash the jars, and then label them and put them in the pantry. And so there you go. Alright, so if you would like to make this recipe, the cooked version is on my website. It's been on there for years. But I will be going ahead and adding the canning version of this on the website, and you can get a free printable version of it over there. I will put a link to it in the video description down below. So thanks for joining me here again at the homestead. My name is Constance from Cosmopolitan Cornbread. God bless, and I'll talk to y'all next time.